Okay, we'll be in Exodus chapter 32 today. Kind of to lay the background, the Israelites have been in the wilderness. They're at the foot of Mount Sinai. Moses and some of the leaders have been up in the mountains for a long time. And then we'll leave it there. So, first question I have for you is, what do you have a hard time waiting for? Where do you get the most impatient? And when I thought about this question, I do a lot of grocery shopping and I don't like getting into a line that just stops. And of course, if you get into another line, what happens? It stops. So that's one thing that I don't like to do. I don't like to be waiting for a long time. Another thing I thought about, and then I'll open it up, is if you go to a restaurant, and this happened to us. We went to a restaurant and waited like 20 minutes and nobody ever came to see us. So we got impatient and left. But, what item or what thing do you have a hard time waiting for? Waiting for somebody to join them. So if you got a meeting time and they don't show up on time, or they don't let you know why they're not going to show up on time. Other items. DMV.
I'll tell you what, I would get rid of every one of them county workers and I would contract that out, give performance bonuses, those people would be on the spot. But if I will avoid that place like the plague.
I do too, but there's certain times that you go that you can get in and out really quick. If you get there real early in the morning, you can get in and out real quick. Other things that make you don't like waiting for.
Well, I'm going to expand your grocery thing a little bit. Shopping, and I have to wait on my wife when she goes shopping.
Okay, waiting on your wife when she's shopping.
Especially if it makes me go when I'm tired, because I drag in the store.
I know one thing Linda brought up when we were talking about is waiting for doctor's appointments. You call up and you want to get in, well, you got to wait a month before you can get in. Carl.
I really have a hard time waiting for the climax of the Christian life, the second coming of Jesus.
So you
I'm
has,
sure you all struggle with that as well. Lord, what are you waiting for? Look at the word.
so he has a hard time waiting, knowing that the second coming is coming and it doesn't come soon enough. That's good. So before we get into the reading, and we'll have somebody read the first 14 verses here in a minute, what is a definition of an idol? What is definition of an idol?
Anything but we put before God.
That's probably the best answer that I could find. I mean, there's a lot of things you can say as an idol, but it's anything that is placed between God and us. Anything that you take that takes your time away or anything between you and God is considered an idol. So the truth tonight we want to work on is that idolatry damages our relationship with God. Then idolatry leads to judgment. So who would like to read the first 14 verses of Exodus chapter 32? CJ.
Now when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people assembled about Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us a god who will go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we don't know what has become of him." Aaron said to them, "Tear off the gold rings which are in your ears of your wives, your sons, your daughters, and bring them to me." Then all the people tore off the gold rings which were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took this from their hand, fashioned it with a graving tool, and made it into a molten calf, and he said, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt." Now when Aaron saw this, he built an altar before him. And Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord." So the next day they rose early and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play. The Lord spoke to Moses, "Go Go down at once, for your people, whom you brought up from the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. They have quickly turned aside from the way which I commanded them. They have made for themselves a molten calf, and have worshipped it, and have sacrificed to it, and said, This is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. The Lord said to Moses, I've seen this people, and behold, they are an obstinate people. Now then, let me alone, that my anger may burn against them, and that I may destroy them, and I will make of you a great nation. Then Moses entreated the Lord his God and said, O Lord, why does your anger burn against your people, whom you have brought out from the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians speak, saying, with evil intent, you brought them out to kill them in the mountains, and to destroy them from the face of the earth? Turn from your burning anger and change your mind about doing harm to your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants to whom you swore by yourself, and said to them, I will multiply your descendants as the stars of the heavens, and all this land of which I have spoken I will give to your descendants, and they shall inherit it forever. So the Lord changed his mind about the harm which he said he would do to his people.
So the people of Israel are here at the foot of this mountain, and they've heard God on this mountain before, and Moses has gone back up to get the Ten Commandments. How many miracles have they seen?
Too many.
Too many? I mean, they saw all the plagues of Egypt. They saw the parting of the Red Sea. They saw Pharaoh's army destroyed. You know, they got fed, they got watered, as some people said. You know, they had all these miracles. And yet, after Moses has gone a long time, what happens? They get antsy, or they fall back to what they know, or what they did know. And where did they learn about idols? Egypt. And we talked a little bit about this last week. How many idols did Egypt have?
Too many.
Too many, that's right. Too many to count. You had them for everything. They had, idols for everything. So they were impatient. Like you said, well, Moses has gone up in the mountain. He's been there probably 40 days and 40 nights. We don't know if he's ever coming back. What are we going to do? If you think about it, little kids are really impatient. Now, we talked about being impatient ourselves, but little kids are impatient too. And I kind of relate that myself until like some of this generation, as they're in the late teens and 20s, you got to have that instant gratification. I mean, you got your cell phone, you can pull it out and look up anything you want, or order anything you want. You got the instant gratification, but if you have to wait, what happens? Your mind wanders. And you get impatient. I remember this joke somebody told me one time, that there was a minister that went up to this guy to prove something. He said, if you can kneel down and pray for 5 minutes straight, I'll give you a brand new car. So the guy started on his knees, he started praying, and about 2 minutes later he goes, what color? He had lost his focus. And this is what happened here, is Israel has lost their focus. But what did Aaron do? Did Aaron help him out? No, Aaron did not. So, and he made everybody involved in this. So how long do you think it took to make the calf? I mean, it doesn't say, but how long do you think it would probably take to make the calf?
It had to have taken a while, and I read this, a lot of us read this and are like, oh man, what are these people doing? But at the same time, I try to put myself in kind of their shoes as well. You're right, Moses was gone for a while. Not only he, but how many of the elders that went up with him and stayed at that base, and then he went on further. Man, okay, a week goes by. Oh, is everything okay? 2 weeks goes by. 3 weeks, 4 weeks, right? Because 40 days is how many weeks? Just shy of 6 weeks. That's a long time to be in the middle of nowhere with nothing. And I wonder if Aaron, if his intentions weren't bad at first, all right? Now he's like, okay, I'll do something. I would really like to ask him these questions. Did you just try to do something just to kind of to calm the people, or what? That's not what happened at all.
To appease the people. But if you think about it, one of the things they had to do is they had to make the furnace. Because there wasn't a furnace out there to melt the gold or anything. So how long did it take to do that and find all the lumber or wood that they had to use to make it hot enough? And then somebody had to be able to take that, and we don't know how big the calf was. I mean, it could have been really little or it could have been really big. I mean, it's probably pretty big considering they were taking all the gold that they brought in from Egypt to make this calf. So they had plenty of time to think about it while they were doing this. But did it stop them? No, it didn't stop them. And how did they use this calf?
Party.
They partied, that's right. They gave sacrifices to it. They partied. They, did things that they shouldn't normally do. It was not a good thing. It's interesting. What does God say in verse 7 that's a little bit different? If you want to reread verse 7. It's kind of subtle. It's something I didn't realize until I was studying this. Your people. You brought out. Now, what was Israel supposed to be? God's chosen people. And here he's going, no, Moses, they're your people.
That's kind of what you say when it's your child or
Right. That's your wife. That's your husband. That's your kid. Your daughter. So does that mean God was upset? Yeah, definitely. God was upset at what was going on. But what did Moses do when God was so upset?
Begged God to have mercy on them.
Yeah. He reminded God of why he brought him out. Moses was humble. Jeff.
He became a mediator, and I think he became a mediator, which is kind of a foreshadowing of what Jesus is for us. A mediator.
Right, he became a mediator between God and the people.
But look what kind of slap it was against God's face when they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of Egypt." I mean, that was an immediate slap against God, because he brought him out of Egypt, and then now give the credit to the calf.
Right. Why did they use a calf, by the way? What did the calf or a cow symbolize?
Prosperity, maybe? Prosperity?
It could be, but any ideas?
Wasn't one of the Egyptian gods of that?
One of the Egyptian gods, yep.
Not the harvest, but of the, I can't think of it.
Actually, it represented strength and fertility. Don't know if that kind of played into what Aaron was trying to do or what they were trying to do, but that was just kind of a side note. But yeah, Moses was humble. He understood, he understood that his calling was to what? To deliver, not to discard people.
Hey, Joe, as we're reading that, or as we read it, it's interesting that even back then, this has been a problem throughout time. And I considered Romans 1:25, and when Paul wrote to the Romans, he said, "For they exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever."
Yeah.
But too often, people are always looking for something to put their eyes on, when God just wants our eyes on Him at all times. But we look around a lot of times and we're like, oh, well, I'll follow that. Or what's been created versus the Creator. And that can be a slippery slope, even if intentions are well.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us have heard the acronym BUSY, being under Satan's yoke. And it was just, all this stuff was a way of staying busy.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of focusing on what they should have been doing, and really reminding themselves every day that, you know, hey, God's been directing us all these years, and He did all these things instead of reminding us, which is what Deuteronomy 6 is all about, a constant reminder of what we should be looking at, the creation around us, or whatever it may be, and reminding ourselves, but instead of doing, but the problem is when we remind ourselves of God's miracles, we become responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't like to be responsible. And we stay busy doing something. And I was going to say earlier, we were talking about an idol. I think an idol is, you know, we all have things we like to do. But when those things deteriorate or take away from what are our serious, you know, daily spiritual responsibilities, they become idols. I don't care what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Busy, but we like to stay busy.
We do like to stay busy, that's right. So what was Moses' reason to, well, back to it, he was called to deliver, he was not called to discard. Now if you think about that, Moses was called to go deliver the people out of Israel, or out of Egypt, which he did, but now God just wants to discard them. Does that sound very fair? Or
I would have lost patience with him a long time before this.
okay, he would have lost patience a long time ago, yeah. Moses had to be a very patient person. But he reminded God of why he brought them out. And he reminded God that if he killed them out in the wilderness, then all the nations would see this and say, yeah, he pulled them out into the wilderness just to get rid of them, just to kill them. And it wouldn't look good.
I've often thought, Joe, that I'd take to be Aaron and have to try to explain to the Lord why we built that golden calf.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that he was under a lot of pressure from a lot of people and probably succumbed to that pressure.
Yep, yep.
Here maybe fear too. Maybe he was afraid of them.
Well, he could have been afraid of them. Yeah, they came out with all kinds of stuff. Marcy.
I was thinking that when he said this, he was done with them, and God wasn't going to destroy them yet. He listened to Moses, and I don't know, maybe I went ahead and I'm not supposed to, but in 32, Moses says, you know, blot my life, my name out of the book of life. Just don't do this. And God said, no, I won't. We'll lead them. And he says in 34, I will visit their sin upon them. And they're the ones that didn't go into the promised land. You know, they were the ones that roamed around. For
The wilderness,
40 years.
yep.
They were lost. They were not, God, he kind of was done with them.
They
He
were
was merciful with them.
they were an obstinate people, yes.
Yes.
Jeff.
Well, I look at things kind of differently every once in a while, and it just kind of struck me that when Aaron said, these are the gods that brought you out of Egypt, well, in a way they were, because God intended to destroy all these gods that were in Egypt that were influencing his people. And I don't know how to explain it, but it just seems to me that, you know, these gods are the reason that the people came out, because God wanted his people as his own, and he didn't want them to be influenced by these gods or any other gods. And I think it's a lesson for us that these gods don't influence us, because we're right in the middle of Egypt right now. We're living in Egypt. No matter where you're at in the world, you're living in Egypt and you're being influenced by all these different gods. And I think we need to wake up to that fact that we can be and we are being influenced by other gods than the true God that created everything.
So Jeff looks at it a different way, just to let everybody know. He says, if you think about it, the way Aaron said, these are the gods that brought you out of Egypt, they actually are, because they're the reason, you know, God went in to get them out of Egypt, so they were actually the reason he helped them, you know, get out of Egypt.
He just, out came the cat.
Yeah, we'll get to that. we'll get to the excuses. CJ.
Interesting thing, God's anger burned with them, and he said that to Moses. But it's really cool to see how Moses' attitude has changed compared to Exodus 3 when God, for the burning bush, right? And God said, hey, I'm going to use you. You're going to bring my people back to Egypt. What did Moses say? No, I'm not. No way. He just kept making excuses. So it's cool to see that he actually has changed his attitude and his mind a little bit, whereas before he was really hesitant to speak to God this way, I'm sure, on behalf of those who he was originally sent to help bring out.
Mhm.
For their people.
Scott.
Kind of building on what CJ shared, it really is a great picture of Moses being a bridge between God and the people and seeking God's grace or favor. And, that really, again, is kind of a foreshadowing of Jesus for us. And then as we follow Jesus, that's what we should be doing as well, trying to bridge people to Jesus and to God in that relationship with Him in whatever way that we can.
So for those who didn't hear that, Scott said that Moses was acting as a bridge between the people and God. And it's really a foreshadowing of what Jesus would do for us, because he is acting as the bridge or the advocate for us, between us and God. Think about this statement. Our sinful nature makes it easy to put things ahead of God or look to other things to satisfy only what God can satisfy. And I'll say that again. Our sinful nature makes it easy to put things ahead of God or look to other things to satisfy us, to satisfy only what God can satisfy. So we're looking for something to satisfy us, but we're not looking to God to do that. That's what our sinful nature does. So in what ways do idols damage our relationship with God? In what ways do idols damage our relationship to God?
Takes our focus off of God, and therefore puts itself, or it is between us and God, so we can't have that communication. It's like a wall that blocks us.
Okay. Takes us away from God, builds a wall between us and God. Ross?
It's a waste of time that we could be spent growing closer to God.
It's a waste of time we could use to spend to be closer to God. Carl?
It's the fastest way to become an atheist, because there's only one God, it's the God of Israel. If you believe in anything else, you're an atheist.
Fastest way to become an atheist. Any others? Hinders our closeness to God. It blocks His blessings. Think about that. We look for purpose and fulfillment from things that can't provide it. You're always going to have that hole, that frustration, that need, that want, that you may try to get things to fill it, but it never seems to get filled. Or if it gets filled, it's very short-lived and you got to go on to the next thing. Excuse me. How can we know when something has become an idol to us?
And we find it taking us away from doing something that we're supposed to be doing.
Okay?
When we reach the point of addiction, we cannot let go of it. We so attached to it that we don't know what to do. We sleep with it. We wake up in the morning, we bow to it. I mean, we just cannot get it out of our mind. And our mind should be occupied by one entity, the God of Israel.
Right. We begin to give it priority over God. That's when we know something has become an idol. We look to it instead of God to meet our needs. kind of self-explanatory. Any other comments on the first 14 verses? Okay, before we start the next verses, describe a silly, ridiculous excuse you have heard, overheard, or used. Like, the dog ate my homework. The cat ate my homework. Thank you. What other excuses have you heard?
Flip Wilson, the devil made me do it.
The devil made me do it. Okay. Jerry?
I actually had a guy come jump the truck one day on the flat line, and he said, Jerry, I gotta go home. I said, you gotta go home, what's up? He said, my dog bit my cat's face off. Well, it turned out it was true, but I thought at the time, now this is the most ridiculous excuse I've ever heard.
How about, I don't have time for that, Carl?
The worst excuse I've ever heard, not heard but read about, is when Jesus was casting out demons and they told him that it's by the power of Satan that you're casting out demons. Because they didn't want to believe, they accused him of having a demon.
Yep.
That was the worst excuse ever. Demons do not cast out demons.
Yep. Accusing Jesus to have a demon when he was casting out demons. I can remember being at work and go up to somebody and try to get some help, and they'll go, that's not my job. Have you ever heard that one before? That's not my job. Jeff?
Anytime the religious leaders of Jesus' time accused him of doing something wrong, to be healed or do something on the Sabbath.
Any other excuses you want to bring up? First you, then Marcy.
As a teacher, you didn't tell us to do it.
You didn't tell us to do it. Marcy.
The saddest one is when someone's leaving the church. As soon as I work it out, I just gotta work it out, and then I'll come back. I just have to go. And you're like, no.
She said,
She said, kind of go a little bit louder.
What I said was,
Oh, when somebody leaves the church, they said they're going to work it out, and then come back.
They're just gonna work some things out.
Scott?
Well, I think a lot of times what happens is we become critical of ourselves, but we don't want to deal with that shortcoming in our own lives, and so we start criticizing someone else to excuse our behavior, or we fall into that comparison trap. Well, that person does it, and I guess they're okay, or whatever. So all those kinds of things can really keep us from God.
Bobby down the street is doing it. Why can't I do it? Bob.
you know, the whole concept of worship is to give. And I learned that 50 plus years ago. And it hit me then, and it never ceases to amaze me now, that people will often say, well, I didn't get anything out of sermon today, or I didn't get anything out of the singing today, or I didn't do whatever. And the more we mature as Christians, the more we understand that we're coming to encourage each other, and we're coming to worship and give back to God our praises and our worship. And so it's not a concept of, if you come, I mean, people that are less mature and non-Christians, they come, to receive, and we need to give, from that perspective, give them what they come to receive. But when we learn why we're coming, we're not coming to get it.
Right.
Even though sometimes we need to receive ourselves, but the whole concept of worship is to give back to God.
Jeff?
One excuse that comes to my mind is, I think it was King Agrippa said at a more convenient time.
More convenient time. Yeah. I'll do one. I'm going to show my age, and you can tell me who this is. I will gladly pay you Tuesday for a burger today. Who was that? Wimpy, right, Wimpy. Okay, we better read. Who wants to read Exodus 32, 15 through 35? Okay, Ross.
Moses turned and went down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands. They were inscribed on both sides, front and back. The tablets were the work of God. The writing was the writing of God, engraved on the tablets. When Joshua heard the noise of the people shouting, he said to Moses, "There is the sound of war in the camp." Moses replied, "It is not the sound of victory. It is not the sound of defeat. It is the sound of singing that I hear." When Moses approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, his anger burned. And he threw the tablets out of his hands, breaking them to pieces at the foot of the mountain. And he took the calf the people had made and burned it in the fire. Then he ground it to powder, scattered it on the water, and made the Israelites drink it. He said to Aaron, "What did these people do to you, that you led them into such great sin?" "Do not be angry, my lord," Aaron answered. "You know how prone these people are to evil. They said to me, 'Make us gods who will go before us.' As for this fellow Moses, who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." So I told them, "Whoever has any gold jewelry, take it off." Then they gave me the gold, and I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. Moses saw that the people were running wild, and that Aaron had let them get out of control, and so become a laughingstock to their enemies. So he stood at the entrance to the camp and said, "Whoever is for the Lord, come to me." And all the Levites rallied to him. Then he said to them, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Each man strap a sword to his side, go back and forth through the camp from one end to the other, each killing his brother and friend and neighbor." The Levites did as Moses commanded, and that day about 3,000 of the people died. Then Moses said, "You have been set apart to the Lord today, for you are against your own sons and brothers, and he has blessed you this day." The next day Moses said to the people, "You have committed a great sin, but now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin." So Moses went back to the Lord and said, "Oh, what a great sin these people have committed. They have made themselves gods of gold. But now, please forgive their sin. But if not, then blot me out of the book you have written." The Lord replied to Moses, "Whoever has sinned against me, I will blot out of my book. Now go, lead the people to the place I spoke of, and my angel will go before you. However, when the time comes for me to punish, I will punish them for their sin." And the Lord struck the people with a plague because of what they did with the calf Aaron had made.
So Moses comes down. Obviously, he's a bit angry because what does he do? Breaks the tablets. So how do you react when people disappoint you or get you mad? You don't have to answer, but think about that. How do you react when people get you so angry that you're like Moses, you just want to break the tablets? Everybody's going to act a little bit differently. Somebody's going to yell. Somebody's going to shut down. Somebody's just going to run away. Everybody has a little bit different way they're going to handle that. So he burned and ground up the golden calf. Now, I don't know how long that took. I mean, grinding it up into things so we could, into little pieces, we could throw it on the water and then make everybody drink of it. I mean, probably took a few days, I would think. I mean, consider the tools that they had. You know, probably a hammer and a chisel or something, and get it that small to go into the, have everybody drink it. How'd you like Aaron's excuse?
I have something to say about that. I mean, Aaron was slacking off really, really bad. If you look at to the whole passage, Moses did his job for him. Moses became the priest for Israel. He's the one who made atonement.
Right.
What was Aaron's job? Israel first priest.
Right.
And that was laziness. I cannot imagine God's anger toward him. It's not written how angry God was toward him, but I'm sure he was not happy with Aaron at all.
So Moses was doing Aaron's job at this time as priest for Israel. So he called the people, who's on the Lord's side? And who came over? Now, I want all the guys in here to pretend you're a Levite. Could you strap on a sword? And then when Moses said, go kill your brother, could you do it? What kind of lesson do we learn from this? Ross?
Reminds me of the passage that says, hate what is evil and cling to what is good. You really have to hate what is evil in order to obey God. And they really did this time.
And how many people fell?
3,000.
Where else do you find that number?
I was reading that this morning and I thought about this. In fact, I underlined this verse 28 today in my study this morning. The first day of the church, 3,000 were added to their number. So it's a cool contrast that on the day that Moses had planned to give the people the Old Testament covenant law versus the New Covenant law, 3,000 people were added to the rolls of eternal life.
To the church, yeah. But God wasn't done at 3,000 people when he killed them, was he? What else did he do? He sent the plague on them. We don't know how many people were, killed by the plague.
I find it interesting right after he said the Lord sent the plague on the people because they made the calf, the one that Aaron made.
Yeah.
And Aaron was the leader, so he's going to
Take the blame,
yes, the responsibility for it.
responsibility for it.
Well, plus he says he's going to wait his punishment until the time that he decides for him to have punishment.
Kind of interesting, we talked about this with Moses, again, being the mediator, goes, blot my name out of the book of life if you're going to, wipe these people away. He was, again, trying to bridge that gap.
I thought it was interesting in verse 25, where it says, for Aaron had left me out of control to be a derision among your enemies. And consider that our sin, our enemies look at us and see that as our weakness. Even as a country, as our country, people in our country sin, our enemies will see that as a weakness that they could exploit.
Other comments? Marcy?
All this is because Aaron compromised. Is all he had to do was hold the line. We're going to wait for Moses. We're not gonna look away like we said earlier. If we just stay focused, no compromise. And it's so hard not to, but if we trust God, this is easier said than done.
Yep.
If we trust God, we will hold the line. And that's all they had to do. When we compromise, we've lost it.
Marcy said Aaron compromised, and he shouldn't have. He should have, held the line, told them no, we're going to wait for Moses. Jeff?
Verse 33 shows the superiority of Jesus over Moses. Because Moses offered himself as a sacrifice for the people, but it wasn't good enough for God. And when Jesus offered himself as a sacrifice for the people, that was the only one that God would accept.
So the first part of today on verses 1 through 14, we talk about idolatry damaging our relationship with God. And here we see that idolatry leads to judgment. But applying this lesson, let me ask you this. What is involved in giving God first place in your life? What is involved in giving God first place in your life?
You have to sacrifice your pride.
Sacrifice your pride. You got to give priority to spending time with Him in biblical reading, in prayer. What else? Conviction to do what's right? Go ahead, Pam.
Spend time with his church, spend time with his people.
Spend time with the saints in the church?
God gives me opportunities every day to die to myself or serve somebody else. Almost every day. And it's like numerous opportunities daily to make God first in my life.
Serving God and others, yeah. Yeah. Giving time. I mean, giving money if you can. And lots of other things too. How can we keep things we enjoy from becoming idols to us? How can we keep things that we enjoy from becoming idols to us?
I think Paul hit that right on the head in 1 Corinthians 6:12. He said, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are profitable. All things are lawful, but I will not be mastered by anything. Because when all of a sudden I'm mastered by something that isn't God, like our sister over there said, it becomes our idol. It really can.
So you don't let it become master over you, right, Bob?
Well, generally, if we're doing what we should be doing, there isn't a whole lot of time left for work.
So it's limiting our time on how much we spend on that object or activity. Submitting to God each day, Ross.
Whatever is maybe close to becoming an idol in my mind or in my heart, it's something that I should give to other people in that, if it's an activity or if it's a possession that I have that God's blessed me with, I should be willing to offer that to somebody else who may need it more than I do. Or if it's an activity, do it with somebody else and bless their lives with that time.
Scott.
A lot of it has to do with the kind of people that we hang out with, too. Obviously, we want to try to influence people toward the Lord, but, if you're hanging around people who are diligently seeking God, you're going to be more likely to diligently seek God as well. And so, I think that's a big factor. I know that was especially true in my life as a young Christian, because all of my previous friends before I became a Christian were not Christians. And, I had to make a decision. There's certain things I would do with them, certain things I would not. And my ultimate, association with them was to help bring them to Christ. And at some point when that became pretty obvious that they were not interested in that in the least, then, my association with them lessened more and more and more.
So it depends on who you hang out with and who do you. Yeah. Nation.
I'm a creature of habits, so good habits and good routine.
Replacing bad habits with good habits. Jerry.
I think there's a lot of what Scott just said. I know at times I find myself, I'm ashamed to say it, but I walk in the bedroom and Cindy's reading the Bible and I think, I ain't read my Bible yet today, so I go get my Bible and sit down and do some reading. And it's just a simple fact that she's an encouragement to me, and I try to be vice versa to him. So I think it has a lot to do with what Scott said, the people in our lives, that we try to put in our lives.
Before we run out of time, I want to read this list. It's a little note in my Bible says, how to expose the idols in your life. And I'll just kind of hit the highlights. So here are some things you need to examine in your life if you want to expose the idols in them. Examine your imagination. What are you always thinking about? What's on your mind? Examine your attention. What do you got your attention on all the time? Examine your finances. What are you putting your money to? Where does it go? Examine your prayer life. And me, like probably a lot of other people, need a lot of work in this area. How much time do you spend in prayer? And what are you praying for? What Scott brought up, examine your relationships. Do you have toxic relationships in your life? Do you need to get rid of some people that you don't need to be around? I say get rid of, but You do it in a nice manner. Examine your emotions. I mean, what sets you off? I mean, do you just fly off the handle real easy? Or are you calm and cool and it takes a while to get you riled? Examine your concerns. I mean, what are you concerned about in your life? And the people that have gone through the leadership class, it says examine your past and future. And if you examine your past, what's that going to do? It's going to tell you where you came from, and you can examine your future saying, this is where I want to go. It could be a goal of reading your Bible more during the day or praying more during the day. And I'll bring up the last two questions, then we'll need to close. So, and you don't answer these, you can just think about them. Which modern day idol could become an idol to you if you're not careful? Like your cell phone. And what can you do this week to help you walk closely with the Lord? Any closing comments or questions before you go pick up your kids? Jerry?
Well, there's another side to that cell phone thing, when I find myself waiting on Cindy a lot, that gives me an opportunity to dream about it. On the cell phone, I got it, if I didn't have it, I wouldn't have the Bible with me.
Yep. Thanks for the comments. Are you teaching next week, Scott? Scott's next week.